The airport was packed that Tuesday morning. People rushed everywhere, dragging suitcases, checking phones, and shouting last-minute goodbyes to their families. In the middle of all this chaos stood Jennifer, a 34-year-old woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her daughter Sophie, just 6 years old, held tight to her mother's hand. The little girl clutched a worn-out stuffed bunny that had seen better days. Its ear was torn, and the fur was matted from years of love and constant hugging. Jennifer's other hand juggled a paper coffee cup that was already half empty, a large purse that kept sliding off her shoulder, and 2 boarding passes that she desperately needed to keep track of. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and there were circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. "Mommy, are we really going on a plane?" Sophie asked for the 10th time that morning. Her voice carried that mixture of excitement and nervousness that only children can manage. "Yes, baby. Just like I told you. We're going to see some special doctors in Chicago." Jennifer's voice was gentle, but there was a tiredness in it that went deeper than just lack of sleep. They reached the gate, and Jennifer fumbled with her purse trying to find the boarding passes she'd just been holding. The gate agent's voice came over the speaker, announcing that families with small children could board first. "That's us, sweetie. Come on." Jennifer rushed forward, her purse swinging wildly as she moved. Inside that purse, tucked into a small side pocket, was a white envelope. It wasn't sealed properly. The glue on the flap had only been pressed down lightly, as if the person who closed it couldn't quite commit to sealing it permanently. The envelope had been in that pocket for 3 days now. Jennifer had written the letter inside at 3 in the morning, sitting at her kitchen table with tears running down her face. She'd addressed it to her daughter, just in case. Just if things didn't go the way she hoped they would. As Jennifer and Sophie made their way down the narrow jet bridge toward the plane, Jennifer's phone buzzed. She shifted everything in her arms, trying to reach the phone in her back pocket. The purse slipped again. She caught it, but not before the side pocket flopped open. The white envelope fell out, landing silently on the jet bridge floor. Jennifer didn't notice. She was too busy trying to read the text message from her mother while keeping Sophie from tripping over her own feet. "Careful, baby. Watch where you're stepping." They continued forward, disappearing into the plane's entrance. Behind them, about 20 feet back, walked Michael. He was 36, tall, with dark hair that was just starting to show a few gray strands at the temples. He wore a nice suit that fit him well, though he'd loosened his tie the moment his business meeting had ended that morning. Michael had been in Boston for 3 days, presenting architectural designs to a potential client. The meeting had gone well, but he was exhausted. All he wanted was to get back to Chicago, back to his small but comfortable apartment, and sleep for about 12 hours straight. He was scrolling through emails on his phone when he noticed something white on the ground ahead of him. At first he thought it was trash. People dropped things all the time in airports. But as he got closer, he saw it was an envelope. Michael almost walked past it. It wasn't his problem. Someone from the airport would pick it up eventually, but something made him stop. Maybe it was the way the envelope looked so deliberately placed in that side pocket position, like it had been important to someone. He bent down and picked it up. The envelope was addressed in blue ink, in handwriting that looked feminine and careful. "To my daughter Sophie," it read on the front. "If I don't make it through this surgery, please read this when you're old enough to understand." Michael's breath caught in his throat. His eyes went back to those words. "If I don't make it through this surgery." He looked up quickly, scanning the jet bridge ahead of him. He could just barely see the back of a woman with a ponytail entering the plane, a small child beside her. Was that who dropped this? It had to be. No one else had been in front of him. His first instinct was to run after her, to tap her on the shoulder and return the letter immediately. But something stopped him. The words on that envelope were private, deeply private. If he went running up to her now, shouting about the letter, everyone around them would hear. The little girl would hear. The child whose name was on the envelope. How do you hand someone something like that back in front of their child? Michael stood there in the jet bridge, other passengers flowing around him like water around a stone. Someone bumped into him with their carry-on bag, muttering an apology. He barely noticed the envelope felt heavier than it should. It was just paper, but it held the weight of someone's fear, someone's love, someone's desperate need to leave something behind just in case the worst happened. He carefully tucked the letter into his inside jacket pocket, the one closest to his chest. He'd find the woman on the plane, he decided. He'd wait for the right moment when the child wasn't paying attention and return it quietly. Michael made his way onto the plane. The flight attendant checked his boarding pass and directed him to business class. Seat 4A, a window seat, thankfully. He stored his bag in the overhead compartment and settled into his seat. From where he sat, he could see back into the economy section. He spotted the woman from earlier. She was several rows back, helping her daughter get settled. The little girl was clutching that stuffed bunny like her life depended on it. The mother was pointing out the window to her daughter, probably trying to make the flight seem more exciting and less scary. Even from a distance, Michael could see the tension in the woman's shoulders. The way she moved with a careful deliberation that suggested she was working hard to appear normal. A flight attendant walked by, and Michael almost called out to ask for help delivering the envelope. But what would he say? How would he explain that he'd seen private words that weren't meant for his eyes? The plane began to fill up. Passengers shuffled down the aisle, stuffing bags into overhead bins, arguing over seat assignments and settling in for the flight. The usual chaos of boarding. Michael sat with his hand resting on his jacket pocket, feeling the outline of the envelope through the fabric. Inside, he could feel his own heartbeat, steady but faster than normal. He thought about that little girl. Sophie. She looked so small, so innocent, excitedly talking to her mother about the clouds they'd see from the window. She had no idea what was written in that envelope. No idea what her mother was facing. The flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Michael watched without really seeing. His mind was elsewhere, thinking about the woman a few rows back who'd written a goodbye letter to her daughter just in case she didn't come home from a surgery. What kind of surgery required a letter like that? Something serious, something with real risk. And she was taking her daughter with her to Chicago, which meant she probably didn't have anyone else to watch the child while she went through whatever medical procedure awaited her. The plane's engines roared to life. Michael felt the familiar rumble as they prepared for takeoff. He looked out the window at the Boston skyline, then closed his eyes. In his pocket, the envelope seemed to pulse with importance. He'd return it. Somehow, he'd find the right moment and give it back. But something told him that this simple act of returning a dropped letter was going to be more complicated than he could possibly imagine. The plane leveled off at 30,000 feet, and the seatbelt sign dinged off. Michael hadn't moved much since takeoff. He sat rigid in his seat, staring at the back of the headrest in front of him. His hand kept drifting to his jacket pocket, touching the envelope through the fabric. Every time he did it, he felt a fresh wave of uncertainty wash over him. What was he supposed to do with this thing? The ethical answer seemed simple. Find the woman, return the letter, walk away, easy. But nothing about this situation felt easy. If he walked back there right now and said, "Excuse me, you dropped this," what would happen? The little girl would see it. She'd ask questions. Kids always ask questions. And what 6-year-old could resist asking about a letter with her own name on it? Then the mother would have to either lie to her daughter or explain something that no child should have to think about. Not on a plane. Not surrounded by strangers. Not right before whatever medical crisis was waiting for them in Chicago. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. He hadn't slept well in Boston. The hotel bed had been too soft and his mind had been racing about the presentation. Now his exhaustion was catching up with him, but sleep felt impossible. A flight attendant stopped by his row. "Would you like something to drink, sir?" "Coffee, please, black." Michael needed to stay awake to figure this out. She poured him a cup from her cart and moved on. Michael sipped it slowly, burning his tongue a little but not really caring. Maybe he should read the letter. Not the whole thing, just enough to understand the situation better. Then he could make a more informed decision about how to return it. No, that was wrong. He knew it was wrong the moment the thought entered his head. Reading someone's private goodbye letter to their child? That wasn't just crossing a line. That was obliterating it. But that one glimpse he'd gotten kept replaying in his mind. If I don't make it through this surgery. What kind of surgery? Cancer? Heart problems? Something with the brain? His younger sister flashed through his mind. Rebecca. She'd been only 31 when she died. 4 years ago now, but it still felt fresh sometimes. Like a wound that looked healed on the surface but ached deep down whenever the weather changed. Rebecca had also written letters. Lots of them toward the end. One for each member of the family. One for her best friend. She'd even written one for her cat, which would have been funny if it hadn't been so heartbreaking. Michael remembered finding his letter after she passed. It was in a yellow envelope on her kitchen counter, with his name written in her shaky handwriting. She'd been so weak by then that even holding a pen was difficult. He'd sat in his car in her driveway for an hour before opening it. When he finally did, he'd cried so hard he'd thought he might be sick. The plane hit a patch of turbulence. Not bad, just enough to make the aircraft bounce a little. The seatbelt sign came back on with a ding. Michael heard a small voice from somewhere behind him. "Mommy, I don't like this. It's okay, sweetie. It's just bumpy air. Like driving over a bumpy road, remember?" That was the mother's voice. Jennifer. The envelope had said her name was. She sounded calm, but Michael could hear the tightness in her tone. The turbulence got worse. The plane dropped suddenly. That stomach-lurching feeling that made even experienced travelers grip their armrests. A few people gasped. Someone's bag fell from an overhead compartment with a thud. "Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the seatbelt sign. Please return to your seats immediately." The flight attendant's voice was professional but firm. Michael looked back toward economy. He could see people settling back into their seats. Then he saw Jennifer and Sophie coming up the aisle from the back of the plane. They must have been in the bathroom when the turbulence started. Sophie was crying. Not loud, hysterical crying, but that quiet, scared kind of crying that little kids do when they're trying to be brave but can't quite manage it. She buried her face in her mother's side as they walked. "We're almost back to our seats, baby. Just a few more steps." Jennifer had one arm around her daughter and the other hand bracing against the seats as they walked. The plane lurched again and she stumbled slightly. They passed right by Michael's row. He was close enough to see the exhaustion etched into Jennifer's face, the way her jaw was clenched tight. Close enough to see the worn patches on Sophie's bunny, the tears on the little girl's cheeks. As they moved past, Sophie looked right at him. Her eyes were wide and scared. Michael gave her a small smile, trying to be reassuring. She didn't smile back, just pressed closer to her mother. They made it back to their seats. Michael turned in his seat, watching as Jennifer buckled Sophie in and then herself. She was saying something to her daughter, probably more reassurances that everything was fine, but Michael knew better. He knew that when you were facing something really scary, when you were staring down the possibility of not being there for your kid anymore, even normal turbulence felt like a sign, like the universe confirming your worst fears. The plane settled down after a few more minutes. The ride smoothed out and the seatbelt sign went off again. People started moving around using the bathroom, stretching their legs. Michael made a decision. He'd wait until they landed. He'd follow them at a distance through the airport and return the letter somewhere private, maybe in baggage claim or outside by the taxi stand, somewhere the little girl wouldn't overhear. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was better than the alternatives. He tried to distract himself by pulling out his laptop. He had some design work to review, blueprints for a community center project he was working on. But his mind wouldn't focus. The lines and measurements on his screen blurred together. About an hour into the flight, Michael heard voices again. He glanced back and saw Jennifer and Sophie in the aisle again, heading toward the bathroom. This time Sophie wasn't crying. She was actually skipping a little, her bunny bouncing along with her. "No running on the plane, remember?" Jennifer said gently. "I'm not running, Mommy, I'm bouncing." "Well, no bouncing either." Michael found himself smiling despite everything. Kids had this amazing ability to bounce back from fear. 5 minutes ago the girl had been terrified, now she was playing. They disappeared into the bathroom at the back of the plane. Michael went back to pretending to work on his laptop. A few minutes later they came back up the aisle. As they passed his row again, Michael heard their conversation more clearly. "When we get to Chicago, will Grandma be there?" Sophie asked. "Yes, baby. Grandma's going to meet us at the airport." "And then we go see the doctors?" "Not today. The doctors aren't until Thursday. Tomorrow we'll just rest at Grandma's house." "Will the doctors make you better?" There was a pause. Michael held his breath, waiting for Jennifer's answer. "They're going to try their very best, sweetheart. They're very smart doctors. But you'll be okay, right?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'm going to fight as hard as I can to be okay. For you." Michael's throat tightened. He stared at his laptop screen without seeing it. That's what was in the envelope, he realized. The answer to Sophie's question if the fighting wasn't enough. The words her mother wanted her to have if the very best wasn't good enough. He closed his laptop and put it away. Work could wait. The rest of the flight passed slowly. Michael dozed off for a little while, his head against the window. When he woke up, his neck was stiff and the pilot was announcing their descent into Chicago. Michael sat up straight and looked out the window. The city stretched out below them, Lake Michigan glittering in the afternoon sun. Somewhere down there was a hospital. Somewhere down there, in 2 days, Jennifer would face whatever was waiting for her, and in Michael's pocket, folded carefully in its envelope, were the words she'd written just in case she didn't make it back to tell her daughter she loved her in person. The plane touched down with a slight bump. People immediately stood up, reaching for their bags even though the plane was still moving. Michael stayed seated. He wasn't in a hurry anymore, he had a letter to return. And somehow he needed to find the right way to do it. The baggage claim area at O'Hare Airport was packed with people. Everyone crowded around the conveyor belts, watching for their luggage to appear. Michael stood off to the side, his own bag already in hand, scanning the crowd for Jennifer and Sophie. He spotted them near Carousel 3. Sophie was sitting on top of a large suitcase, swinging her legs back and forth, still holding that bunny. Jennifer stood beside her, eyes fixed on the moving belt, looking more tired than ever. Michael's heart pounded as he walked closer. He'd practiced what he'd say in his head a dozen times during the walk from the gate. Each version sounded worse than the last. How do you approach someone about something like this without making it weird? He was about 20 feet away when he saw someone else approaching them. An older woman, probably in her early 60s with gray hair and glasses. She was moving fast, almost running. "Jennifer, Sophie!" The older woman's voice carried across the noise of the baggage claim. Sophie jumped off the suitcase and ran toward her. "Grandma!" The older woman scooped Sophie up in a hug that looked tight enough to squeeze the air out of the little girl. Then she set Sophie down and pulled Jennifer into an equally fierce embrace. Michael could see the older woman's shoulders shaking. She was crying. Jennifer hugged her mother back and Michael saw her face crumple for just a moment before she pulled herself together. "Mom, I'm okay. We're okay. I know. I just needed to see you both." The grandmother wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Michael stopped walking. This changed things. Jennifer wasn't alone. She had family here, support. Maybe that made returning the letter easier, or maybe it made it more complicated. He watched as they collected Jennifer's bags from the belt. 2 large suitcases plus the carry-on. The grandmother took one bag, Jennifer took the other, and Sophie carried her small backpack that was shaped like a butterfly. They started walking toward the exit. Michael followed at a distance, weaving between other travelers. His palms were sweating. The envelope in his pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. They were almost to the automatic doors when Michael made his decision. "It was now or never, excuse me." He called out, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Miss?" Jennifer turned around, confusion on her face. Sophie and her grandmother turned too, all 3 of them looking at this stranger who was approaching them. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. "You dropped this on the jet bridge when you were boarding." The color drained from Jennifer's face. Her eyes locked onto the envelope and her hand flew to her purse, fingers scrabbling at the side pocket that was now empty. "Oh my God." The words came out as barely a whisper. She took 2 quick steps forward and grabbed the envelope from Michael's hand. Her fingers were shaking as she turned it over, checking it, making sure it was really hers. The grandmother moved closer, putting a hand on Jennifer's shoulder. "Honey, what is it?" Jennifer didn't answer right away. She was staring at the envelope like she couldn't quite believe it was back in her hands. Michael saw her thumb brush over Sophie's name written on the front. "I didn't even realize I'd lost it," Jennifer said finally. She looked up at Michael and he saw tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you. You have no idea. This is..." She couldn't seem to finish the sentence. "I saw just a glimpse of what it was," Michael said quietly, glancing at Sophie, who was watching this exchange with curiosity. "I'm sorry. I didn't read it. I just saw enough to know it was important." Jennifer clutched the envelope to her chest. A single tear rolled down her cheek and she quickly wiped it away. "Thank you," she said again. "Thank you so much." There was an awkward pause. Michael knew he should just walk away now. He'd done what he needed to do. Mission accomplished. But something kept his feet planted where they were. "Are you okay?" The question came out before he could stop it. Jennifer's laugh was short and humorless. That's a complicated question. The grandmother was watching Michael carefully now, sizing him up. Sophie had moved closer to her mother, sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. "I'm sorry," Michael said. "I didn't mean to pry. He trailed off. What was he doing? This wasn't his business. These were strangers, but they didn't feel like strangers. Not after sitting on that plane, knowing what was in that envelope, hearing Jennifer comfort her daughter during the turbulence. "Mom, can you take Sophie to get a snack?" Jennifer said suddenly, still looking at Michael. "I'll meet you by the taxi stand in a few minutes." The grandmother hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave her daughter alone with this unknown man. But something in Jennifer's expression must have convinced her. She took Sophie's hand. "Come on, sweetie. Let's go find some cookies." "But I want to stay with Mommy," Sophie protested. "Just for a minute, baby. I'll be right there." Jennifer gave her daughter a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Once they were gone, walking toward a small shop nearby, Jennifer turned back to Michael. She was still holding the envelope against her chest like a shield. "I have cancer," she said bluntly. "Breast cancer. Stage 3. The surgery is Thursday at Northwestern Memorial." The words came out fast, like she was ripping off a bandage. "That letter, it's for Sophie, just in case things don't go well." Michael felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Hearing it confirmed, hearing her say it out loud, made it all suddenly very real. "My sister," he heard himself say. "I lost my sister to breast cancer. 4 years ago." Jennifer's eyes widened. "I'm so sorry." She was 31. By the time they found it, it had already spread too far. Michael swallowed hard. He didn't usually talk about Rebecca with strangers.
He didn't usually talk about her at all.
She waited too long to get checked. She thought she was too young for it to be anything serious. "That's awful," Jennifer whispered. They stood there in the middle of the airport, two people connected by a disease neither of them had chosen. Around them, life continued. People rushed past with their luggage. Announcements echoed over the speakers. A kid somewhere was crying about wanting ice cream. Michael pulled out his wallet and took out a business card. His hands were steadier now, his purpose clear. "I live here. In Chicago. If you need anything, and I mean anything, here's my number. Rides to appointments. Someone to watch Sophie, or just someone to talk to who gets it." Jennifer took the card, looking at it like she couldn't quite process what was happening. "I don't understand. You don't even know me." "No," Michael agreed, "but I know what it's like to watch someone go through this alone. My sister didn't have enough support. She tried to handle everything by herself because she didn't want to be a burden. I wished every day that someone had been there for her the way she needed." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again. "That's incredibly kind, but I couldn't possibly—" "You're not asking. I'm offering." Michael kept his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to call. But if you need help, please don't hesitate, even if it's just for something small." Jennifer looked over at the shop where her mother and daughter were standing in line. Sophie was pointing at something in the display case, probably those cookies her grandmother had promised. "My mom's here," Jennifer said. "She'll be with me for the surgery and everything after." "That's good. That's really good." Michael meant it. But he also knew that sometimes family wasn't enough. Sometimes you needed someone who had been through it, who understood the specific fears that came with cancer. Jennifer slipped the business card into her purse, into that same side pocket where the envelope had been. "Thank you," she said for the third time, "for returning the letter, for being kind, for all of this." "I hope I don't hear from you," Michael said. And when Jennifer looked confused, he clarified, "I hope that means everything went perfectly and you didn't need any help." A real smile crossed Jennifer's face for the first time since he'd approached her. "That's a strange thing to hope for, but you know what I mean." "Yeah," Jennifer said softly. "I do." They stood there for another moment, and then Jennifer took a step back. "I should get Sophie. She's probably already eaten half the shop by now." "Of course. Good luck on Thursday. You'll be in my thoughts." Jennifer nodded, her hand touching her purse where both the envelope and the business card now rested together. Then she turned and walked toward her family. Michael watched her go. He saw her reach Sophie and her mother, saw her pick up her daughter and hold her tight for a long moment. The grandmother was asking questions, probably about who Michael was and what they'd talked about. Michael turned and walked toward the exit, heading for the taxi stand on the other side of the terminal. He felt lighter somehow. even though he'd just taken on the emotional weight of a stranger's crisis. He didn't expect his phone to ring. He didn't expect to ever see Jennifer or Sophie again. He'd done what he could, offered what help he had to give. Sometimes that's all you can do for people. Offer, and hope they're brave enough to accept if they need it. As Michael stepped outside into the Chicago afternoon, the autumn air cool on his face, he thought about Rebecca, about all the help she'd refused because she didn't want to bother anyone, about how things might have been different if someone had insisted on being there for her. He pulled out his phone and looked at the date. Thursday, 2 days from now. He set a reminder, just to think about Jennifer that day, to send whatever positive energy he could into the universe on her behalf. It wasn't much, but it was something. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold. Michael woke up at 6 earlier than his alarm. He'd been dreaming about hospitals, about sterile white hallways that went on forever. Rebecca had been in the dream, walking ahead of him, always just out of reach. He sat up in bed and rubbed his face. The reminder on his phone sat there on his nightstand, glowing in the dim morning light. Jennifer's surgery today. Michael got up and made coffee. While it brewed, he stood at his kitchen window looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there in one of those buildings, Jennifer was probably already at the hospital, getting prepped for surgery, scared out of her mind. He'd thought about her on and off for the past 2 days, wondered if she was okay, wondered if she'd looked at his business card again or just thrown it away. He wouldn't blame her if she had. Taking help from a stranger wasn't easy for most people. His phone rang at 7:30 right as he was getting out of the shower. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam. But something made him pick up. Hello? Michael. This is Patricia, Jennifer's mother. The voice on the other end was tight with stress. She gave me your card. I'm so sorry to call you like this, but I don't know what else to do. Michael's stomach dropped. What happened? Is Jennifer okay? She's fine. Well, she's at the hospital. The surgery's in 2 hours. Patricia's voice cracked. But I woke up this morning and I'm sick. Really sick. Fever, chills, coughing. I think it's the flu. Michael sat down on the edge of his bed, water still dripping from his hair. Okay, I can't go to the hospital. They won't let me near Jennifer before surgery if I'm sick. The risk of infection. Patricia took a shaky breath. And someone needs to watch Sophie. Jennifer's scared out of her mind about the surgery, and now she's worried about Sophie too. I told her I could still watch Sophie here at the house, but Jennifer said no. She doesn't want Sophie around me if I'm contagious. Where's Sophie now? She's with Jennifer at the hospital. In the waiting room. But Jennifer goes into pre-op in 45 minutes. Patricia paused. I know this is asking too much. I know you barely know us. But Jennifer said you offered to help and I'm out of options here. Michael was already standing up, heading to his closet. Text me the address of the hospital. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Really? Patricia sounded like she might cry. Are you sure? I'm sure. Tell Jennifer it's going to be okay. Thank you. Oh God, thank you so much. Michael got dressed faster than he'd ever dressed in his life. Jeans, a sweater, shoes. He grabbed his keys and wallet and was out the door in under 3 minutes. The drive to Northwestern Memorial took 25 minutes. Michael found parking and jogged to the main entrance. Patricia had texted him the floor and waiting room number. He found them on the 4th floor. Jennifer was sitting in a plastic chair, wearing a hospital gown under a robe they'd given her. Her face was pale and her hair was pulled back. Sophie sat next to her, coloring in a book, the stuffed bunny propped up on her lap. Jennifer looked up when Michael walked in. Relief flooded her face. You actually came. Of course I came. Michael pulled up a chair and sat down across from them. How are you feeling? Terrified, Jennifer said honestly. She glanced at Sophie, who was focused on coloring a picture of a butterfly, but trying not to show it. Michael nodded. He understood that. The need to be brave for the people you loved, even when you were falling apart inside. A nurse came to the doorway. Jennifer, we're ready for you in pre-op. Jennifer's hands started shaking. She looked at Sophie, then at Michael, then back at the nurse. Can I have just one more minute? Of course. I'll be right outside. Once the nurse left, Jennifer knelt down in front of her daughter. Sophie, baby, I need you to listen to me. Sophie put down her crayon and looked at her mother with those big, serious eyes that kids get when they know something important is happening. Mommy has to go with the doctors now, and Mr. Michael is going to stay with you while I'm gone. Is that okay? When are you coming back? Sophie's voice was small. It's going to be a while. The surgery takes a few hours, and then I have to rest after. But Mr. Michael will take good care of you. Jennifer's voice was steady, but Michael could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. But you're coming back, right? Jennifer pulled Sophie into a tight hug. I'm going to fight as hard as I can to come back to you. The doctors are very good, and they're going to help me. Sophie hugged her mother back, her small arms wrapped around Jennifer's neck. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. More than anything in the whole world. Jennifer pulled back and looked at her daughter's face like she was trying to memorize it. Be good for Mr. Michael, okay? Okay. Jennifer stood up slowly. She looked at Michael, and he saw the terror in her eyes that she'd been hiding from Sophie. Her grandmother's address is in my phone. The passcode is Sophie's birthday, April 15th, 415. We'll be fine, Michael assured her. You just focus on getting through this. Jennifer reached into the bag beside her chair and pulled out the white envelope. The letter. She handed it to Michael with shaking hands. Just in case. If something happens. If I don't. She couldn't finish the sentence. Michael took the envelope. It felt exactly like it had 2 days ago on the jet bridge, heavy with love and fear. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be fine. But if I'm not, then I'll make sure Sophie gets this. But you're going to be fine. Michael held her gaze. Rebecca didn't have a team like yours. She didn't catch it early enough, you did? That makes all the difference. Jennifer nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The nurse appeared in the doorway again. Jennifer, it's time. Jennifer looked at Sophie one more time. I'll see you soon, baby. Then she turned and walked out of the waiting room, following the nurse down the hallway. She looked back once, giving Sophie a small wave. Then she was gone, disappearing around a corner. Sophie stared at the empty doorway for a long moment. Then she looked up at Michael. Is my mommy going to die? The question hit Michael like a punch. Kids always knew. They always sensed when adults were scared, even when you tried to hide it. Michael knelt down so he was at Sophie's eye level. Your mommy is very sick, and the doctors are going to do surgery to make her better. Surgery is scary, but these doctors are really smart. They do this kind of thing all the time. But she might die, Sophie said. It wasn't a question this time. Michael wasn't going to lie to this kid. She deserved honesty. There's always a small risk with surgery. But your mom is strong, and the doctors are going to do everything they can to make sure she comes home to you. Sophie's lip trembled. I don't want her to die. I know, sweetheart. I don't want her to die either. Sophie climbed into Michael's lap then, something that surprised him. She was still clutching that bunny, and she buried her face against his chest. Michael wrapped his arms around her and let her cry quietly. They sat like that for several minutes. Other families in the waiting room glanced over with sympathetic looks. Everyone here was waiting for someone. Everyone here was scared. When Sophie's tears slowed down, Michael said, Hey, are you hungry? We could go find some breakfast. Sophie pulled back and wiped her nose with her hand. Can we get pancakes? We can definitely get pancakes. I think I saw a cafeteria downstairs. They took the elevator down to the first floor. The cafeteria was busy with doctors and nurses grabbing quick meals between shifts. Michael got Sophie a plate of pancakes with syrup and butter, plus a cup of orange juice. For himself, he got more coffee and a muffin he probably wouldn't eat. They sat by a window. Sophie drowned her pancakes in syrup and ate slowly, her bunny sitting on the table next to her plate. What's your bunny's name? Michael asked, trying to keep conversation going. Mr. Floppy. That's a good name. Mommy gave him to me when I was born. She said he's been with me my whole life. Michael watched Sophie eat. She was being so brave. Braver than most adults would be in her situation. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Any updates? Michael typed back. She's in surgery now. Sophie and I are in the cafeteria. We're okay. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Patricia's response came through. Thank you for being there. It means everything. The surgery was supposed to take 3 to 4 hours. Michael knew they had a long wait ahead of them. He looked at Sophie, who was now making a face out of pancake pieces on her plate. And he looked at the envelope sitting in his jacket pocket. The letter he hoped this little girl would never have to read. After breakfast, want to help me find the best spot in the waiting room? Michael asked. Maybe one by a window where we can watch the cars go by. Sophie nodded. Okay, and can you tell me a story? What kind of story? A happy one. About someone who got better. Michael's throat tightened. Yeah, Sophie, I can tell you a story like that. And so he did. 4 hours passed like 4 years. Michael and Sophie had moved back to the surgical waiting room after breakfast. They'd claimed 2 chairs by the window, just like Michael had promised. Sophie sat with Mr. Floppy in her lap, sometimes coloring, sometimes just staring out at the city below. Michael tried to keep her distracted. He told her stories about the buildings he'd designed, showed her pictures on his phone of the community center project he was working on. He even let her play a few games on his phone, something that kept her occupied for almost an hour. But mostly they waited. And waiting in a hospital is its own special kind of torture. Every time a doctor in surgical scrubs walked into the waiting room, Michael's heart jumped. Every time they called someone else's name, Sophie would look up hopefully, then deflate when it wasn't about her mother. Michael kept checking his phone. Patricia had texted several times asking for updates. He'd replied each time with the same message. Still waiting. Sophie's doing great. At hour 4.5, Sophie fell asleep against Michael's arm. Her head rested on his shoulder, and she clutched Mr. Floppy tight against her chest. Michael didn't move, didn't want to wake her. His arm went numb, but he stayed perfectly still. The envelope was still in his jacket pocket. He could feel it there, a constant reminder of what was at stake. At hour 5, a surgeon walked into the waiting room. She was still wearing her surgical cap, and she looked tired but not devastated. That was a good sign, Michael thought. Devastated was bad. Tired but calm was better. Family of Jennifer Patterson? Michael gently shook Sophie awake. Hey, sweetie. The doctor's here. Sophie's eyes opened slowly. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Then she saw the doctor and sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. Michael stood, keeping Sophie's hand in his. They walked over to the doctor together. I'm Dr. Reynolds. Are you Jennifer's husband? The doctor looked at Michael with a question in her eyes. No, I'm a friend. Her mother couldn't be here. She asked me to stay with her daughter. Michael squeezed Sophie's hand. How is she? Dr. Reynolds smiled, and Michael felt like he could breathe for the first time in hours. The surgery went very well. We removed the tumor and some surrounding tissue. The margins look good, which means we got everything we could see. She'll need chemotherapy as a follow-up, but her prognosis is very positive. She's okay? Sophie's voice was small and hopeful. Dr. Reynolds knelt down to Sophie's level. Your mom is going to be sleepy for a while, but yes, she's okay. She did great. She's a fighter. Sophie burst into tears. Not sad tears this time, but relief. All that fear she'd been holding in all day came flooding out. She buried her face against Michael's side, and he wrapped his arm around her. Can we see her? Michael asked. She's in recovery now. Give us about 30 minutes to get her settled, and then you can visit. A nurse will come get you. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Reynolds stood up and gave Sophie's shoulder a gentle pat. Your mom is going to be just fine, sweetheart. After the doctor left, Michael and Sophie sat back down. Sophie was still crying, but she was also smiling through the tears. She's okay. Mommy's okay. Yeah, she is. Michael felt his own eyes getting wet. He pulled out his phone and texted Patricia. Surgery successful. Jennifer's in recovery. Doctor says prognosis is very positive. Patricia's response came back immediately. Oh, thank God, thank God. Tell Sophie I love her. Tell Jennifer I'll see her as soon as I'm not contagious. 25 minutes later, a nurse came to get them. Jennifer's awake and asking for her daughter. They followed the nurse through a maze of hallways to the recovery area. Jennifer was in a bed by the window hooked up to various monitors and an IV. Her face was pale and she looked exhausted, but her eyes were open. Mommy. Sophie ran to the bed and the nurse helped her climb up on a stool so she could reach. Hi, baby. Jennifer's voice was hoarse and weak, but she managed to smile. Come here. Sophie leaned carefully against her mother and Jennifer wrapped one arm around her. I missed you. I missed you too. The doctor said you're going to be okay. I am. I'm going to be okay. Jennifer looked over Sophie's head at Michael, who was standing by the door. Thank you. For everything. Michael nodded. I'm glad you're okay. Did she behave? She was perfect. Brave and strong, just like her mom. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared. When my mom called and said she was sick, I thought I'd have to go through this alone. Or worse, I'd have to bring Sophie into the operating room with me. "You're not alone," Michael said simply. They visited for about 15 minutes before Jennifer started falling asleep. The anesthesia was still wearing off and her body needed rest. "We should let you sleep," Michael said gently. Jennifer nodded, her eyes already half closed. "Will you take Sophie to my mom's house? The address is in my phone, of course. And Michael?" Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper now. "That letter? I don't need it anymore. You can throw it away." Michael touched his jacket pocket. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I'm going to be here to tell her all those things myself." Sophie kissed her mother's cheek. "I love you, Mommy." "Love you too, baby. Be good for Mr. Michael." In the elevator going down, Sophie reached up and took Michael's hand without being asked. It felt natural, like they'd known each other longer than just one very long, very scary day. They drove to Patricia's house in silence. Sophie stared out the window, processing everything that had happened. Michael navigated through Chicago traffic, feeling emotionally drained but relieved. Patricia's house was a small, neat bungalow in a quiet neighborhood. She answered the door wearing a bathrobe, tissues in hand, looking absolutely miserable but also hopeful. "How is she?" Patricia asked immediately. "Surgery went great," Michael said. "Doctor says the prognosis is really positive." Patricia's knees seemed to buckle with relief. She steadied herself against the doorframe. "Oh, thank God, come in, come in." Sophie ran inside and straight into her grandmother's arms, not caring about the flu. Patricia held her tight, both of them crying happy tears. Michael stood in the doorway, feeling like maybe he should leave now. His job was done. Jennifer was okay. Sophie was with her grandmother. But Patricia looked at him over Sophie's head. "Please stay for dinner. It's the least I can do. I'm not a good cook even when I'm healthy, but I can order pizza." Michael started to decline, but Sophie pulled away from her grandmother and looked at him with hopeful eyes. "Please stay, Mr. Michael." And that's how Michael found himself eating pizza in Patricia's living room, while Sophie told her grandmother all about their day. The pancakes at breakfast, the stories Michael had told her, the games on his phone. Later, after Sophie went to take a bath, Patricia and Michael sat in the kitchen drinking tea. "I don't know how to thank you," Patricia said. "What you did today for a complete stranger." "Jennifer's not a stranger anymore," Michael said. "And neither is Sophie. Will you come visit? When Jennifer's home from the hospital, I think she'd like to see you." "I think Sophie would too." Michael thought about it. About how he'd planned to just return a letter and walk away. About how life had other plans. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." 3 months later, Michael sat in Patricia's backyard watching Sophie play on a swing set. Jennifer was beside him, her hair starting to grow back after chemo. It was short and fuzzy, and she wore it proudly. "How are you feeling?" Michael asked. "Good. Tired, but good." The last scan was clear. Jennifer watched her daughter swing higher and higher. "I never thought I'd be sitting here. That day on the plane when I dropped that letter, I really thought that might be the last thing I'd ever write to her. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't." Jennifer looked at Michael. "You know what's funny? I never even sealed that envelope properly. Some part of me didn't want to admit I might need it. Couldn't quite commit to the idea that I might not make it. Good thing you didn't seal it. Made it easier to fall out and get found by the right person." Jennifer laughed. "Is that what you are? The right person?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm just a person who was in the right place at the right time. I think you're more than that." Jennifer's voice was soft but serious. "You showed up when I needed someone. You took care of my daughter when I was terrified and alone. You didn't have to do any of that." "Yes, I did," Michael said. "Because someone should have done it for my sister. And no one did." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Sophie play. Mr. Floppy sat in the grass nearby, keeping watch like always. "Hey, Michael," Sophie called out from the swing. "Watch how high I can go." She pumped her legs harder, soaring up toward the sky, fearless and free. Michael watched her and smiled. This little girl who'd been so scared 3 months ago, crying in his lap in a hospital waiting room, was flying now. Jennifer reached over and squeezed Michael's hand. "Thank you. For everything." Michael squeezed back. "Anytime." And he meant it. Because that's what you did for people who weren't strangers anymore. People who'd become something more. People who'd become family. The white envelope still existed somewhere, tucked away in a drawer in Jennifer's bedroom. Unsealed, unread, unnecessary now. A reminder of a dark moment that had passed. a goodbye that never needed to be said. But more than that, it was a symbol of how the things we lose sometimes lead us to exactly what we need to find. How a dropped letter can become a found connection. How strangers can become family. How the worst days can lead to the best people. Sophie jumped off the swing at its highest point, landing with a thud in the grass. She laughed, that pure sound of childhood joy that makes everything else worth it. "Did you see that, Mom? Did you see Mr. Michael?" "We saw," Jennifer called back. "You were amazing," and she was. They all were. Amazing and brave and still here. Still fighting, still finding reasons to laugh on ordinary Thursday afternoons in late summer. Still writing new stories, better ones together.